there's so much truth in writing. And it's like, what truth are you afraid of in your writing? It's you. You know, what are you afraid of? As a kid, I would just have all these thoughts. It was anxiety, it was confusion, because I was afraid to be who I was. I was afraid to be a little gay black boy in a world that still doesn't love gay black boys. And so I just remember, like, in the middle of the night, I would take out a pen and paper and I would just start writing things down, like reflections, or just like one-word sentences kind of things. And then over time, they just sort of developed into poems. Those poems began to just kind of, I guess, help me process my emotions. I don't think that I would have named, this is anger, this is sadness, I don't think I would have been able to name the emotion, but being able to write a metaphor about what I was feeling somehow was a little bit better. And I'm like, yeah, looks like this black monster inside this dark hole. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I feel like. You know, there's something about being able to associate that feeling with words on the paper. So it's reflective, it's therapeutic. I think in book I mentioned, like, you know, how writing poetry for me was therapy without the couch, you know, and the therapist, right? It was, yeah. I remember writing this one poem just sort of about like, what I'm trying to figure something about, like, how I think I see or experience God in my poetry. Because again, I always go to poetry when I'm trying to figure things out. And I don't always anticipate them becoming spoken word poems. It just kind of happens in the stream of consciousness as I'm writing. But I remember performing that poem at this open mic. I got so amped up, like I was just like emotionally invested in the poem. And somehow that emotional investment did something to the audience. I saw people, like, some folks were almost like tearing up, some people were clapping, but there was sort of this like, oh, like, that poem is also for me too. And that's when there's that shift, right? The poetry on the page, I would say, was always sort of for me first. The poetry that I do now perform on the stage, of course I write them for me first, but I realize if I'm gonna perform them, there's at least one person out there who's supposed to get this too. And I've seen some of the bravest people get on the mic, not even on a microphone, even in a classroom setting, share a poem and cry their way through it. And what that does for other people is it inspires them too, right? So there's a matter of like, yo, if you want to be brave with your poetry, you have to be brave with your poetry. To be brave with it out loud, you got to be brave with it within yourself. And how you get there, I believe, is write to yourself. You know, can you talk to yourself in your poems? Go to your poems, ask the questions. You know, what are you afraid of, right? And write a poem about that. I'm afraid to write a poem, you know, and then go. And let my parents tell it, I came out curious before crying. A queer kid full of questions, complete with some kind of knowledge embedded inside the brain holding up my big ass black head. I had a curved ledge attached to the back of my skull that Pop, former jock, would wrap his hands around and hold like a football before pretending to launch me into the air, and I swirl around the atmosphere giggling at my father's gentle touch. Ma tried smoothing out my knowledge mountain with her soft hands. Same ones she used to grease Pop's hair as a teenager and twirl baton betweens her majorette fingers at their homecoming parades. She mushed and mashed what I came out knowing into more manageable size until my body grew into itself. My parents called the back of my head a puck. I have no idea why they chose this word, as there was never a time in our lives together when hockey was a part of any discussion. As a kid, I only knew a puck to be some black round thing that skates smooth on slick ice, and that people on two sides of a thing with razor blade feet and long curved sticks love to beat around until the puck submits to being captured in a net disguised as a protected space for its safety. And this happens so much that it's only a matter of time before one side is crowned victor and the puck is exposed for all that it really is. A piece of black property, destined to be locked and stacked up inside of a cage in the dark with the rest of the pucks and all of their knowledge, until the next game time, when they will again inspire some fight about them between people on two sides of a thing who will be cloaked in armor and who will ignore how badly the puck's been beaten and how naked and cold it's been for what feels like centuries, until some black, white, striped skinned person with authority blows a whistle before the brawl begins.